Coalition is facing failing voter support after Stephen Marshall was ousted as South Australian Premier last weekend. Joining us for our regular political forum is the member for Kingsford Smith. Why are you laughing?
Well, because why does he get top billing?
Labor's Matt.
It's because he's better looking, right?
I'm just moderator. I'm not saying anything. And
I'm the neutral moderator.
Number one, member of Mackellar, Jason Falinski.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning, Janie.
Well, why don't we start with you first then?
Oh, no.
You get top billing, mate.
I sit on my own petard.
Well, let's talk about the South Australian election. It was won by Labor, of course.
Yep.
Now, what do you think in terms of moving into the federal election? Because we do see a swing to Labor with a lot of what is happening. There's a lot of talk that certainly that could be the way. The latest polls showing Labor's in front.
Yep.
What do you think?
Oh, well, we're the underdogs. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think the South Australian election was mostly about COVID. People forget very easily that in early December, Steve Marshall was on track to win 8 seats, not lose 5. And what happened was he opened the borders, he did the right thing. COVID came into the state, and a lot of people who were older, over 65, who are rightfully concerned about the impacts of COVID on their health, voted against him because they didn't like that outcome. Matt,
do you think Liberals are a bit nervous?
The election federally will be fought on federal issues and it's going to be close. We all know that. But I think the interesting thing about the South Australian election, Janie, is that previous elections over the last couple of years have been dominated by COVID and the response. I think South Australia showed that people are starting to think about the recovery and building back better in the future. And that's where I think the Malinowskis opposition, now government, did so well. They were thinking about how to repair the healthcare system, how to grow the economy and create jobs. And I think that that's going to be the issues that go into the federal election as well. How we build back better, how we get some of the cost of living pressure down, how we look at solving problems like climate change and childcare, and they're going to be the dominant issues.
There are some big issues indeed. And do you know, the philosophy of when we are in disasters, in wars and so forth, generally speaking, there's that term that people don't really change from their incumbent at the time. But we certainly saw that with the state election last week. What about the news, Nick Xenophon? He's back after 5 years. You're rolling your eyes.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to. He said he wants to give a damn about the issues that the main parties don't. He's talking about healthcare, aged care, manufacturing jobs.
And unicorns, of course.
And unicorns.
And he wants everyone to have vanilla ice cream. I mean, look, I have observed these so-called independents, who are usually backed by people who don't have the courage to come out and say who they are. And the fact of the matter is they're a sideshow. The media loves them because they create, a lot of copy, and there's a lot of... I mean, who can forget the time when he had to stay up to midnight to do his job, so he decided to wear pyjamas? I mean, the fact of the matter remains that governing is actually hard work, serious policy issues. It's not about slogans, it's about solutions, and these guys aren't serious.
He's talking about he wants to get rid of the toxic culture, Matt, in Canberra.
Well, he had the chance to do that in the past and he was voted out. And I think you're going to see quite a few independents run, not only in the upper house, but in the lower house as well. And they got the right to do that. It'll be interesting to see how some of them go. But I come back to the point that I think that people are starting to think about the future and how we recover from COVID. And that's why cost of living and climate change and childcare and all these other issues are so important. And Labor believes that we've got a better policy for a better future.
We have announcements, a couple of them actually, healthcare, endometriosis, $58 million to help combat that or help treat endometriosis. Also, more than $1 million for self-funded retirees set to benefit, and that's in the budget on Tuesday, along with a lot more. What are you expecting the outcome to be?
Look, I think that the budget will focus on cost of living issues for families in particular, home ownership issues for young Australians who are trying to get into property. And I don't think that we can ignore national defence. I think that we live, if the last 6 months show us anything, the deal in the Solomon Islands between China and the Solomon Island government shows that we live in a very insecure world that's very fluid and dynamic at the moment, and we need to make sure that we're as safe as secure. And Matt rightfully points to climate change, but once again, climate change is a slogan, net zero is a solution. This government is focused on solutions, not slogans.
Matt, Labor is big on homelessness. 49,000 women each night are sleeping homeless, and there's certainly a lot of exclusive surveys coming out this week. There was one, 73% of voters would certainly look at the party that had homelessness, one of their main issues. How's Labor feeling about that?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. We've got record numbers of people sleeping rough every night in not only capital cities but in regions as well. And Labor's got a solution to that. We're proposing a housing future fund that will build more social housing and that will build more affordable properties. I think it's the great failing of this government that we haven't been able to provide a solution for housing affordability. It's a number one issue in my electorate, and it's a great failing of this government. And it adds to cost of living pressure as well. Not only are groceries and petrol and childcare going up, but the cost of housing is astronomical for many Australians. It's locking them out of the market and it's leading to people sleeping rough. And the government doesn't have a solution to that. And that's why we're proposing the Housing Future Fund.
Well, I've got to say, we just released a report. Matt was on that committee. We have 16 solutions to that. And the answer is supply. What I would say to the Labor Party and Jason Falinski, who's come up with this excellent policy, is the problem fundamentally is every time the federal government has stepped in to provide more social housing, more public housing, the states, whose responsibility it is, step out. So what most Australians would know is the federal government is spending record amounts of money on public housing and stock levels are going down. The reason is every time the federal government pours $1 billion in, the state governments take out $1.5 billion. We need to make the state governments put their feet to the fire and turn up, because you're right, it's part of the reason that we've got all this problem is we're not creating enough housing full stop, which then creates pressure on social housing and public housing, which then pushes people into homelessness. Until we fix that problem, this is going to continue to be a major issue. Looking to just the federal government to fix it is a fool's errand.
Well, that's certainly been the issues with a lot of things, the state and federal. We need to all band together, don't we?
And local government too.
And local as well, yes.